Hi everyone, my name is Kenny Joseph. I am currently an assistant professor at the University of Buffalo in the Computer Science and Engineering Department. I graduated with a PhD from the Societal Computing program in 2016. For me, it's either computing about people, for people, or ideally, I think, sort of with people, right? So computing about people is getting data from people, for example, social media, and studying them, right? So using computing to aid, for example, in a social science discipline. There's also kind of computing for people. I think the sort of trendier name for this is like data science for social good. We're given a problem by experts or policymakers and asked, how can we use data science to improve the lives of people, right? But I think there's this other paradigm that's sort of increasingly popular, and I hope continues to become more popular in the field, which is computing with people, right? So not just asking experts or policymakers, what problems should we be solving, but actually going to marginalized populations, to people who have been the subjects of structural oppression and saying, we're here to build technology with you, alongside you, and trying to understand, how that works. So I see societal computing as sort of encompassing all of those, but I'm most excited about the last one, and it's sort of where I'm trying to understand, how we can play a role. The societal computing program at CMU, I think, is one of the few places where you get kind of experts on both sides, right? Which is like people who understand the privacy implications of the data and people who understand the potential benefits. And I think while I was there, we had, some really important and interesting discussions about how you trade those two things off. And so I think the societal computing at CMU is pretty unique in my view. At least when I left there, it was unique in the sort of overlap between the sort of tight-knit overlap between the privacy folks and the people sort of using the data to study people. I think one of the benefits of a societal computing PhD is that the research that I do is pretty tightly intertwined with questions about policy and questions that social media companies are asking, and so. There are a lot of people in this discipline who end up hopping around between industry and academia and in the policy world, right? So a very prominent scholar in the computing for social good area, who, I have colleagues who work closely with, just jumped to the Office of Science and Technology, or Technology and Policy at the White House. And so one of the kind of cool things is that I don't know if you really ever have to make the decision between kind of industry and, to some extent, policy and academia in this discipline, which is cool. My first sort of message is if you're really interested and invested in computing, there's no better place than Carnegie Mellon. I've seen enough to say that I sort of strongly believe that. And I think one thing that's really special about being at societal computing is you get access to courses from experts in a variety of CS disciplines. So machine learning, you're learning from world-renowned experts. Human-computer interaction, you're learning from world-renowned experts. And of course, in societal computing. And so just from a sort of holistic computing perspective, I pretty strongly believe that there's no better place than CMU to get the sort of fundamentals of computing. And so I was changed by the depth to which I could go into different computing disciplines. I think the second piece is within societal computing specifically, there's a huge breadth of scholarship and knowledge around various societal computing disciplines, right? So within the data science for social good space, within the privacy space, within the software engineering space, within the social network space, you have sort of world-renowned experts, and these fields come into dialogue with each other in the classroom where you're sort of sharing space with your colleagues. And so you're all touching on similar questions, but questions that are different enough that you really are forced to think through many sides to the issue. And I think that makes you a better researcher and produces better research altogether. I think societal computing is a unique program in a lot of ways that I didn't quite realize while I was there. Societal computing takes this big question of how computing intersects with society and engages with it in just a bunch of different ways. And I think it's unique in the breadth and expertise to which its faculty and students are able to do so.